Welcome, everybody, to Hope for Our Times. And as you all know, can see, I'm actually back from Israel. However, you haven't seen much of what we were able to do in Israel. You saw a very tiny bit of it. Kasat, a lot of videos, a lot of great interviews I had. Today, I have a very special guest on. Not from Israel, although he's going to Israel with me soon enough. I know he is, because our friend Roddy insists on it. John Hallard's going to join me in a minute. But before I bring John on, because we're going to be talking about the confluence of global crises. All of these things, as John says, even this morning, secular news is saying, why are all of these things happening at the exact same time? Well, guess what? We have answers. And so I'm going to ask John about that. We're going to work through it. But while I was in Israel, I had just a ton of opportunities to interview different people, do videos with Elishu Krohn, just phenomenal things, going to Melchizedek Temple, videos with Uri Steinberg, so many different people. Also, Dr. Hillel Newman, who's now one of the advisors in the Knesset. And then I had this one. I'm going to show you a short clip. It's 3 minutes long. Dan Cohen joined me on set. We're overlooking Jerusalem from the Hinnom Valley. It's only about 3 minutes long. Check this out. It's a great introduction for some of the things that we have coming. And then John's going to be joining us in exactly 3 minutes. Check this out. And as you can tell, I am in Jerusalem, and I want to tell you something else. I have a very special guest with me today, Dan Cohen from the Real Life Network. Dan, just thank you so much for joining me.
Great to be here. Good to be with you, Tom. Thanks, everybody. Yeah.
This is so cool, so exciting. So I want to give everybody kind of the background of where we are, and then I'm going to turn Dan loose in just a minute. But this is not a green screen, because every time we film in front of something like this, people go, you're in a green screen, you're in some office building somewhere in Los Angeles. No, we are not. We're in Jerusalem. And you started with a shot with the camera at the upper room. The upper room, think of this, on the night that Jesus was betrayed, he's with his disciples, they're breaking bread. Remember when Judas had dipped into the sop with Jesus? And he said, the one who does this is the one who betrays me. So that happened right up there. That was the upper room. I would love to do a full message on that. In fact, I probably will soon enough. But also, Dan, there's so many things to connect here. And nobody wants to come to Jerusalem right now because they're afraid. All of Israel is in war. But I kind of look at this like, hey, people can have a little bit of hope and joy right now in the midst of war. And I see people smiling, which is absolutely amazing. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Tom. Well, look, I want to start by beginning with what is biblically true. And what you're talking about, even where we're sitting. Ezekiel 5:5 is one of my favorite verses. It says, this is what the sovereign Lord says. I will place Jerusalem in the center of nations and build everything else around it. Where we're sitting, where we're talking, where we are conversing. I mean, right behind us, you can see there's the Temple Mount, you can see the Mount of Olives, you can see the Garden of Gethsemane. We're sitting across the Hinnom Valley. You can see this is where Yeshua, this is where Jesus hung out. This was his spot, all right here. But biblically speaking, I want everybody to know right off the bat that the fight that Israel is engaged in right now is a spiritual war. And I know your audiences, they know the Bible, they know the Word, they've read the last chapter, they read the book. We know how this story ends. Hamas, Hezbollah, they're in a battle with Israel. It's a spiritual war against God's chosen people. That God says, you're the apple of my eye, I'll never leave you or forsake you, right? You will never break that promise. Israel is not fighting Hamas and Hezbollah are fighting God. Israel's fighting Hamas and Hezbollah. They're fighting, they are enemies of God, of the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and his son is sitting on a throne, even right now. And I just want to say, commend you, Tom, for coming, for being here. I know many people say, I'd love to come to Israel, but now isn't the moment. I think now is the moment. The stories are amplifying, and just you being here, doing a show here, and sharing about the experience. And even you say meeting people, and they're smiling, and they're happy. Yes, there's a lot going on, and everybody's monitoring the news, but I just want to say thank you for being here, and it's important.
So that was just a short clip. What that was is we were at the studio there, overlooking from the Hinnom Valley. My wife was using her phone, so she was using her phone to video the actual filming that was going on. So the audio you heard was not coming in through those mics, but my wife's mic, my wife's telephone. But it was a great time with Dan Cohen and so many others. And Dan is going to be speaking at the conference coming up in Temecula, so is my guest today. And I'm telling you, John, now is a really good time to be in Israel. It was so encouraging for the people while we were there. As you know many of them. You have a lot of friends there, as I do. We have mutual friends there. But it was so encouraging. We saw such incredible things. But I want to, listen, folks, we're going to March. If you want to join us, you'll be blessed. Lord willing, we'll be there. I'm excited about it. But John, I'm excited about having you here. I'm excited you're coming to our conference in Temecula in a couple of weeks. It's so good to see you. Always good to see you. We have a lot coming up.
And we're going to be at Calvary Chapel, the Harbor.
We are.
On election evening.
Election evening.
Live stream. Talk about, I guess we're doing the preview of the End of the World Conference with the End of America Conference, maybe.
That is great.
Depending on how the election goes. I mean, we'll be sort of live streaming as the initial returns start coming in from the East Coast. So.
Oh, no kidding. That's right. So we'll be, I think we're 7 p.m. on the West Coast, right? Is when we're
10 p.m. on the East. All the polls
live.
are closed by about 7 o'clock.
Wow. So we're going to be live. We're going to be doing this panel with Pastor Joe Pettit, Calvary Chapel of the Harbor. That's going to be one exciting evening. And then a couple days later is, the End of America, then the End of the World Conference coming on Friday. And your friend Eric Stakelbeck's going to be joining us too. It's going to be so exciting. John, I know you followed a little bit of what I was doing in Israel. And I got to say this because I'm pretty confident Roddy is going to watch this after he gets out of bed. He really wants to see you. We went to Melchizedek Temple with Eli Shukron. We did so many things with Roddy, but you've got to come see him because you and him, folks. Roddy was an attorney also in America, and John was an attorney.
What a blessing he must be to everyone.
You know, you guys, what's so cool is you both have, your minds are so similar, and it's probably from all the years of being an attorney, how you assess things, the questions you ask, and I just absolutely love listening and talking with both of you guys. It's just I always consider it a treat. You both are a wealth of knowledge, and but you're going to be so blessed that day you finally get there and meet them.
Well, this past Sunday, I actually did the sermon first hour at Fellowship Bible Chapel, and we're getting ready to start a new book. But I talked with the other elder pastor, and he said, "Well, why don't I get to choose?" So I chose the case for Israel back in the land, because I am very irritated in a righteous way about what I see Christians saying about Israel right now. It is off the charts bad. I don't think they talk to anybody in Israel. I don't think they understand what's going on. I don't think they understand the pressure that Israel is under right now, both just with the multi-front war. So let's review the fronts. You have Gaza, you have Lebanon, you have Syria, you have Iraq, you have Iran, you have Yemen, and you have Judea, Samaria, also known as the West Bank. And then the eighth front is the media war against Israel. It's way beyond anything that I thought I would ever see again.
I totally agree.
I don't think I would ever see it at this level. This is World War II type stuff that we're seeing.
Yeah, John, I want to ask you, I do want to talk about that because it's so evident over there. Even Dan said it in the interview. The full interview is going to be available too, and with the right audio, everybody. But he said, we need, now is the time we need people, we need friends, because they know the media sources, and even they're watching the churches. They know there's still a portion of evangelicals that totally support them, and I'm guessing most of the people that watch you or I are on board with that. And they need people to come visit. They need friends. They need to know that people cares. So we went down to Nova, Kfar Aza, Kfar Biri are there. I interviewed Ella from Biri a while back. But we went down there to Nova. And I want to say this. It was some words that you said that were along those lines that have stuck with me since you said them. And I mentioned them to Roddy, is that there's this ugly side. People are just bringing up this ugliness of the Jew and the ugliness of Israel. And one of them is Nova. And with Nova, it was, okay, so you have these young people that are partying. There was a Buddha that was there, right? We understand that. And I jumped on the bandwagon, and I was like, this reminds me of the days of Moses and children of the Israel dancing around the golden calf. And after going to Nova, I realized something. This is what young people do. I was 20 years old one time. I know what I was doing. I was selling drugs. I was smoking dope. I would have been right in the midst of them as anybody that wasn't a goody-goody two-shows. You're at a party. Listen, I'm not defending and saying those are great actions, but there's people on the right that are saying, well, Israel deserved what happened at Nova. It's like, you start looking, I'm troubled by all of these things. Some of the things I even said, I got to take back and say, you know what? Wait a minute. These things are evil. This is pure evil. This is demonic, the things that happen. And now people are saying Israel doesn't have a right to the land. And I'm watching what's coming out of pulpits, and they're hearing it and thinking, wait a minute. God has a covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. It's an everlasting covenant. They don't deserve the land any more than we deserve salvation. Do we deserve it? Do we deserve mercy? Do we deserve grace?
No, look, there's three things to say. So I'll sort of do them in order to respond to you. So some of them came from my sermon last week. One of my favorite passages is Ezekiel chapter 36. And Ezekiel chapter 36 starts talking about people in the mountains of Israel who say, this is our everlasting possession. This is ours. And then God says, listen, I sent you out into the nations, Israel. I sent you out into the nations because of your disobedience. But I am going to bring you back. And I'm not going to bring you back because when you went out into the nations, you played the harlot with the nations, just like you did when you were in the land. But I am going to bring you back because my holy name is at stake. I made a promise, a covenant with you, and I'm going to bring you back into the land. And it says very clearly, and then I will give you a new heart. So one thing that Paul admonishes the church to do in Romans chapter 11 is to not be arrogant. Like, we got it all figured out. We're blessed. We're the people of God. Boy, those stupid Jews blew it again. God says in Ezekiel 36, he's going to bring them back and then give them a new heart. So we know there's a redemption of remnant people coming. And my question is, what role do we play in preparing the way for that? And should we not be trying to prepare the way for that rather than dumping on them when they're under a time of extreme distress? Tom, you were there. People who live up in the Galilee, Haifa. I mean, my Red Alert app goes off. It drains the battery on my phone twice as fast as normal, and I don't have the loud notifications turned on. It just pops up. It drains the battery on my phone because there are so many rocket, mortar, missile attacks coming from Hezbollah. And what are we doing?
Yeah,
I am so distressed by this. And then I saw these young Reform guys on a YouTube channel. I'm not even going to tell you the name of it. And I know they're Reform because they don't wear clerical collars. They have beards usually. And the one thing they said was this whole Judeo-Christian thing has been a psyop from the beginning. That was their whole video. And they said, Martin Luther, how dare all you Lutherans and all you other evangelicals, how dare you criticize Luther for being an anti-Semite? He was right. These are young guys. I'm telling you, we have a major, but then again, I see evangelical Christians there's been a lot of news this week about the temple. Shofar sounded on the Temple Mount, maybe for the first time since 70 AD, or in that era of the Roman siege of Jerusalem. Today I saw that there was a water ceremony that was
Libation.
performed. Libation, yeah, performed. Tom, we know that you went down to the Melchizedek temple. I've not been there, but a couple of years ago I was down there on the Pilgrimage Road, which I understand they're still working on to open up. And go read the Psalms that they sang as they ascended the path from the Pool of Siloam, a giant mikvah, to the Temple Mount.
Amen.
And Tom, we are in their goal. People ought to just be doing handsprings about this as we see this spirit awakening in them. Yeah, it needs to be redirected, and it's not so great. But as you mentioned, God brought them back when they didn't deserve it. Very similar to God sent his son to die for us when we didn't either.
While we were still sinners, Christ died for us.
Oh yeah, I think I read that someplace.
Yeah. John.
So I get a little bit irritated about it when I see these people. And when you look at these end time Bible prophecies and Ezekiel and Daniel and Zechariah and Matthew 24 and Romans with Paul and Thessalonians, these make no sense if there's not a state of Israel back in the land.
No,
they just don't make any sense.
They don't. Well, that's one of the reasons why I think you have so many churches now say, don't pay attention to the Old Testament. Let's just talk about having a happy family, and let's ignore Israel because they have no right to be a nation. Those aren't really Jews there. I really appreciate everything that you just said, everything. And, you can really sense it. And again, they know what's being said about them. Who do they trust? When we were at Temple Zero, Melchizedek Temple, John, to be in that place and realize with Elisha Crone, of all people, the Ark of the Covenant was there. Solomon was anointed at that spot. You see the oil place, you see the place for the wine, the place for the Jacob's rock and the oil and the animal sacrifice. Mm-hmm. You're standing right there. It was an unbelievable thing. And I know you already know all this, but a lot of our viewers don't. That area of the Melchizedek temple was covered with dirt at the time of Hezekiah, 800 BC. So the Syrians didn't find it, the Babylonians didn't find it, the Greeks didn't find it, the Romans didn't find it. Guess what? It was discovered just a few years back. Elisha Crone and his team uncovered, I believe, for such a time as this, because God is waking up the people. That was Temple Zero. And then we were able to walk up from the Pool of Siloam all the way up. You come out at Robinson's Arch up there. I mean, that, and to think of that, in the Psalms that you're talking about, be able to do that hasn't been opened up to the public yet. There's still a lot of work to be done. John, we live in absolutely amazing days, and God is turning his attention to Israel again. You quoted Romans chapter 11. Brethren, I don't want you to be ignorant of this mystery, lest you be wise in your own mind. Lest you be puffed up because you think, like you said, oh, you Jews. Oh, we're smarter than you. Oh, we have it figured out. God warns against that if you don't realize that God is not done with Israel. He says, your own pride. He says, your own pride is going to get you. You don't get it. God's not done with Israel. And what side are you going to be on that day when we stand before the Lord? Well, I just jumped on the bandwagon. It was easier to bash Israel. It was easier to bash the Jews. Everybody's doing it on the left. They started doing it on the right. I got more likes because I did that. Therefore, I went that way. I mean, you look at this and go, it's truly an astounding thought.
So I interviewed Danny Seaman last week. I don't know if you know Danny. He was in Netanyahu's, worked in the government for years. And Danny's an easy interview. It's sort of, hi, Danny, how are you? And then 50 minutes later, it's thank you, Danny, for being with us. But he mentioned a couple things in his interview. You remember the young lady who was taken captive down there in Gaza, the IDF soldier, the one with the bloody sweatpants?
Yep.
It's clear she'd been raped. She's still a hostage. And it's come up a couple times when I've interviewed Danny, and he says, that was my daughter's closest friend in IDF training. He said that when I see that video, I see my daughter. And it's and I think the enemy would describe himself as secular, Jewish, but secular. But he loves, I said, I'm loving the feast days. This is the point, that there is an awakening coming, and I'm seeing it. I see videos of Orthodox rabbis that are friends of mine. Some of them are what you would call hardcore, in-your-face Zionists. I'm fine with that. And they love the scripture. I've seen their kids, they know the scripture. And they're looking for Mashiach to come. Now, there's a lot of baggage, okay? I got that. I've been around the church all my life. There's a lot of baggage in the church too. Let's be honest about it. So it's amazing that God saves any of us, but I'm just telling you, there is an awakening coming, and I think it's time for the church to figure out how we get on board and work with the Lord as this unfolds in front of our eyes.
That's great. What a great question. How do we work with the Lord as we see this unfold with our eyes? John, so we were there for Yom Kippur, the beginning of Sukkot, which I think ends today, Sukkot, today or last night, our time. And seeing the celebrations going on in Israel, there weren't a lot of tourists there, but a lot of Jews were obviously there, secular Jews, Haredi, Orthodox. But it's just phenomenal to watch this and see. I think I'd mentioned it to you that we were part of two different services, or different service of Jews and Arabs that were worshiping Jesus together, Yeshua. They had come to faith only in Jerusalem. I'm witnessing these different things. And God, I believe God is turning from the Gentile world, and he's turning his focus on Israel. He's going to wake them up. Listen, there's a hardness of heart there, but there's also a softening that's taking place at the same time. Yeah, I want to come back to Israel in a few minutes because you have a lot of other things to share too.
Right. But I want to just say something about, you got to go to the Melchizedek temple.
Yeah.
Go read Romans 11 in light of the fact that that place has now been discovered and verified in Israel.
Exactly. And that
or
was
Hebrews.
I'm totally glad you came back to that, because when you look at that and you think, okay, it was covered from the time of Hezekiah until just a few years ago.
So was the pilgrimage road.
The pilgrimage. Why that temple of all temple, the Melchizedek temple that God has decided to display, and the pilgrim's road, pilgrimage. I can't even say it now.
Pilgrimage road.
I mean, you look at, okay, let me throw this out there too, as long as we're still here. Then I got to get over some questions.
Right.
Because we're talking about the confluence of the global crises all at the same time. Okay. Now, in Psalm 102, the psalmist writes about the people of Israel delighting in the dirt and rejoicing in the stones. I look at that, and ultimately that's fulfilled later on, like in the millennial kingdom. But that's what's happening with the archaeology discoveries. While COVID was going on, these things are still being uncovered. That is remarkable. Delighting in the dirt, rejoicing in her stones. For the rest of the world, you look at, it's just a bunch of dirt. They look at Israel. That's just a piece of dirt. We're done with that problem. This is the city of God and the nation of God. And he's putting the people of God back there. And they are, to be a part of that, John, is, to delight in the dirt, seeing the Melchizedek temple, standing there. Literally, that's holy ground. The Ark of the Covenant was there. And I'm standing there, and I looked at Elishu Crone, and the hair was standing up on my arms. I'm like, I'm standing on holy ground. He goes, you are. The Ark of the Covenant was there. It's truly amazing. Anyways.
Same way with Shiloh. In the fence posts that the post holes that they found there matched the dimensions of the tabernacle.
When are you going there with
Precisely. I'll try to do the next trip. I will really try to do it.
I'll even do it.
I'm not worried about safe.
It's safe. We know the biblical wars. It's safe there. It was great. We had the best time. And we'll do a pre-trip, John, so we can go into all kinds of places and prepare the group. But okay, we'll talk about that.
Have you been to Mamre, by the way?
I was there with Aaron Lipkin.
Okay.
That was 12 years ago.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So, I mean, look, there's a lot of places to go. I mean, there's.
And Roddy will take us places too, by the way.
Right. And I want to see that model at the Christ Church of the Temple Mount.
Oh, man, that thing is.
Mind.
We'll take everybody there. We'll take the whole group there.
Nobody goes there. I don't know.
They don't know what's there.
This is a scandal that, like,
it is.
Shiloh, Shem, Samaria, all these biblical places. You don't go. And by the way,
we'll go.
Orthodox Jewish friends have never been there.
Oh, I asked some of our friends, not Roddy, because he goes everywhere, but others. They go, no, never been there. Nope, never been there. But it's like people who visit, I guess, the States. Have you ever been to? No, but they come out here to see all these sites. But over there, everything's right within, I mean, so at the museum there, right? The one you're talking about, you probably have done this. I'm holding the Nebuchadnezzar brick in my hands. It's dated from 604 BC to 560 BC or something like that. That's dated at the time of Jeremiah the prophet. That's dated at the time that Daniel was taken captive. And I'm holding it in my hands. And I'm going, I told Roddy, I said, are you crazy? I could drop this right now. I get too nervous. And he goes, and they have these things in there and nobody knows about it. The archaeologist, like Elishu Kroni, came by there. He's well aware of everything in there. It's phenomenal. The things that we need to take. Friends, if you go with us, we'll take you to there because you have to see. You just got to see this place.
And now I think it's obligatory, just like it's been obligatory for lovers of Israel to go to Yad Vashem. I think it's going to be obligatory for lovers of Israel to go to the Gaza border.
Totally. Nova was such a eye-opener to be standing there and just seeing it.
So I see the clock ticking in the upper right-hand corner.
It is. Okay, we'll get going.
So here's a couple things. Listen, we are at a major inflection point. This election is going to be very, very important, particularly with regard to the U.S. relationship with Israel. Kamala Harris cannot be trusted. She is a liar. She does not understand what I don't know. I don't know if she doesn't understand or she's just so hateful that she tries to hide it. For her to stand there. So Israel takes out Sinwar last week in an amazing operation. And it wasn't even one that they were targeted. And go look at all the clips. Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, all these other people, even experts in Israel were saying, oh, don't go to Rafah. Don't go to Rafah. It's too dangerous. There's nothing there. Don't bother. So where did they get Sinwar? They got Sinwar in Rafah. And then within hours of that becoming public, Kamala Harris is out there saying, we helped take him out. We gave them, it was political harlotry of the first rank, what she was doing when she took credit for that. It was disgusting. And now we have a major scandal within our government of somebody leaking top secret plans of Israel to the Iranians. I have my own suspicions. Carolyn Glick did a great program on this the other day. Somebody's head needs to roll on this, and it needs to happen right now. And the way to make sure that it happens, if it's not going to happen right now, the way to make sure that it happens is vote the right way in the election, and then you have a chance. Somebody needs to go to jail for revealing this information. And they had the audacity to stand there and call themselves an ally of Israel. It is maddening to me. And that's unfolding. Israel's doing amazing things in Lebanon. They've taken out about 1,500 terrorists over the past few weeks, and it was revealed a couple of weeks ago by the IDF spokesperson that they had, in the year since October 7th attack, and Hezbollah starting rocket attacks, missile attacks, mortar attacks on Israel, mainly in the north, on the next day. Okay, they didn't even know how many hostages they had or how many dead they had, and Hezbollah was launching missiles at Israel and rockets. But Israel they had done 700 raids into southern Lebanon. You never heard a word about it. And I think Israel, I'm pretty sure that Lloyd Austin and Joe Biden, if he's on a day when he's aware of things, are pretty cheesed about it. But I'm telling you what, if I was Israel, I wouldn't tell the U.S. a thing until after, just like they did on the pagers, just like they did on the walkie-talkies, just like they did on Nasrallah. Have you seen the pictures of the hole of that building in Beirut where they got Nasrallah? They took down 3 towers, by the way. And by the way, Nasrallah, Lebanon's mentioned all through the Bible. Tyre and Sidon. And guess where Nasrallah happens to be from? Tyre. Now, I think some Orthodox rabbis I've listened to have brought up some things about this. They think it's very significant from a prophetic standpoint. So we're not the only ones. We're not the only nuts out there that think what the Bible says about prophecy is coming true. And then it's kind of a messy thing. So I'm not sure what I'm going to talk on at the conference. I'm probably thinking about doing something on the Abraham Accords. I'm thinking about doing something on. I've been studying the demographics of the world. The new foreign affairs publication from the Council on Foreign Relations, one of their lead articles in the new issue that's just coming out here shortly, is titled, get this is the Council on Foreign Relations, the technocrats of the world, the Zbigniew Brzezinski offspring, whatever you would call those, and when they're sort of satanic oriented. The title of the article is The Age of Depopulation.
The Age of Depopulation.
This is Bill Gates's dream, but it's happening. It's happening naturally. And so in the Tehran Times about 4 years ago, and it repeated a couple other times, the Iranian regime's publication said this: the fertility rate in Iran is declining, and it is declining at the fastest rate of any country in human history. That's their own words. That's the Islamic regime allowing this to be published. Now, what are they trying to do? They're trying to turn it around. But there's 2 things to think about this, and this is why I think it's significant. These Islamists like Khomeini and Raisi, who's no longer with us, and Nasrallah, they are long-term thinkers. They know that this may take 100 years. But what happens if their vision that they don't care if it takes 100 years suddenly needs to happen in 30 years or 20 years or 10 years because of the declining population? Are they more or less likely to take action to do this?
Excellent.
Which fulfills Bible prophecy.
Yeah,
and it explains the thing. The numbers are shocking. I mean, Japan was 123 million, and they project they're losing 2 million people in population this year. That's a big city is gone in Japan this year. Last year was 1 million. China is going to lose half of its population over the next few decades.
I was going to ask you, what about China? And then you look at, here's another strange thing. Here in America, we know there's a population problem. However, we have open borders, and there's buildings going up everywhere. Everywhere.
That's the solution.
Residential.
Is migration.
Migration.
But I saw one of the most heartbreaking videos I've ever seen. Was a guy, his 17-year-old daughter was stabbed to death by an Islamist immigrant in Germany. And he was talking to the German government head about the pain that's caused. And I am holding you personally responsible. It is you can find it on Twitter. It's you have to get the subtitles because it's in German. I'm telling you something, Tom, something is going on we could go on and on about this. So we got demographics, we've got all the stuff in the Middle East. We got the BRICS guys meeting this week to try to get rid of the U.S. Their goal is to get rid of the U.S. dollar. And I saw an interview this morning. I just watched it before I came down here to talk to you. Alexander Dugin, the Russian, Putin's Rasputin is the way he's described, Putin's brain. He's a Eurasian guy, pro-Eurasian, and he's on with this leftist radical nut job named Pepe Escobar, who writes for The Cradle. But they were talking about, we need to have a multipolar world. And the multipolar world is against the West, against Israel. And the leads in this are Russia, Iran, Turkey. And then Dugin says, and we think China, but we're not so sure about, they're sort of still working it out. But wait a minute.
Wow.
You can stop with Russia. This is Dugin yesterday on a BRICS talk. You can find it. It's a very interesting Twitter channel. It's called New Rules Geo is the Twitter handle. And they have this 58-minute video. You should watch it. It's all subtitled. They speak in English, but with the accents, it's all subtitled so you can find. And I'm just telling you, they talk about the multipolar world, Russia, Iran, Turkey, and the Eurasian Islamic republics.
This is really quite an amazing thing, John. So when you look at the confluence of global crises, you look at all of the geopolitical alignments. Of course, we have on the November 5th, we'll be at Calvary Chapel in the Harbor. We talked about that. The End of America conference, we can call that, with Joe Pettick. Then the Temecula, the End of the World Conference, November 8, 9, and 10. And then we also, November 13th is the roundtable that you have.
On technology and that type of thing. That'll be you, me, Patrick Wood, Britt Gillette, and Scott Townsend.
Okay, and with that, so when you look at technology, you guys send me notes all the time. We look what's taking place. I saw this thing with Elon Musk this morning with his Starlink, specifically for Israel and their defense. Very interesting as we look at this. And then you look at the advances of AI. And again, you mentioned the BRICS and the currency. Let me ask you this: where do you see this going with BRICS? Because the problem I see is, was it 96% of the world uses the dollar? Is that what it is? It's really high.
Yeah. So this is this thing. So Britt Gillette, you follow his channel. He probably has a little bit more dire view of what's going on than I do. I think it's going to take time, but I'm an old guy, so it's probably not going to impact me that much. Britt's 20 some years younger. So he's thinking of family and all this other stuff. But listen, eventually the dollar will not be the world reserve currency. And it will be one of these things. It'll be sort of like that discussion about going bankrupt in one of Hemingway's novels. How did you go bankrupt? And the guy says, well, two ways. First, gradually, then suddenly. And so I think that has application, all this stuff we talk about Bible prophecy, because that's why I talk about acceleration, convergence, and then the logistics part about it, because it's like, how did that happen? And I said this, I did Ben Dog last night, his podcast, and I said, and I watched you and James the other day and last week, because I thought they were all very good. And I said this, I said, I don't know, Vinny, how it's going to happen, but at some point we're going to have an End of the World Conference Part 2 or something. And so somebody is going to stand up there and say, this is that which was prophesied. It's going to happen. Mm-hmm. And so we need to figure out, how do we do that? How do we message that in the right way to make sure that you don't have, look, there's plenty of people out there that are doing it on their own. I think it needs to be a group thing. Out of the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, I think will apply. So I just think that we're going to be at that point sometime. And as I said, I'm 70 years old now. I can't believe this. I can't believe I'm 70 years old. But, and maybe it won't happen in my lifetime, but I think we are close to where people are going to say, this is that.
I totally agree. So just thinking of a few things, then I'm going to ask you here in a minute to connect all of the converging dots. But Daniel chapter 12, Daniel's told by the angel, the wicked will see it, they won't understand, but the wise, they will understand. I think we are...
And instruct many, right.
Yeah, we are getting a more and more clarity the further we go down this to people who are paying attention to the book. Okay, now with that, going back to some of the comments you made about pastors, the video you saw with these young guys on there saying the Judeo-Christian thing is all a hoax, you know, whatever they said.
PSYOP, yeah.
A PSYOP, and people are just totally rejecting Israel, rejecting the truth, rejecting prophecy. And you were saying somebody's going to stand up and say, this is that which was foretold. I think of these words from 2 Chronicles at the time of Jeremiah. Nebuchadnezzar's getting ready to take over. Zedekiah is king. He's a wicked king. And it says this, moreover, all the leaders of the priests and the people transgressed more and more, according to all the abominations of the nations, and defiled the house of the Lord, which he, the Lord, had consecrated in Jerusalem. So it's the leaders, it's the priests, it's the people. They're all going against the Lord. And the Lord God of their fathers sent warnings to them by his messengers, rising up early and sending them, because he had compassion on his people and on his dwelling place. But they mocked the messengers of God, despised his words, scoffed at his prophets, until the wrath of the Lord arose against his people, and until there was no remedy. And you see this, the mocking and scoffing against those who are speaking the truth, it seems to be increasing and increasing, which we also know prophetically will happen. Now, granted, that's talking about the time of the Babylonian destruction of Judah, 586 BC, but we see the same prophecy as pattern. So we see this.
That time of the Babylonian leading up to the Babylonian captivity is a pattern for the church in the end times.
And we are seeing it develop.
Listen, I mean, another passage I've talked on a lot is Ezekiel chapter 8. You know, Ezekiel's taken back to Jerusalem, told to dig through the wall, and he sees, and as he goes further and further into the temple complex, it gets worse and worse and worse. And then what does he see? Same thing. The leaders are leading this. They're turning their backs and bowing towards the sun, turning their backs on the Holy of Holies, where the Shekinah glory of God dwelled in the midst of his people. And you know, the Temple Mount is not like way up here. It's like sort of down below the Mount of Olives. Mm-hmm. When you're up in Jerusalem on the Western Hill part up around, you know, downtown area and everything, you look down on the Temple Mount. Mm-hmm. You walk down to the Damascus Gate, down a big hill, and you can see the Dome of the Rock right above the wall, because it's God dwelled among his people. And all of this stuff is coming to the fore. And Ezekiel 9 has the solution. You know, it's like, go through get the guys, the executioners, bring them in, don't spare anybody, no woman, no child. But he says this, you go through this to the scrivener, you go through and place a mark on everyone who sighs and groans at the abominations around them. So we ought to be sighing and groaning. I have to tell you this. I was talking to someone just in the last couple of days, I was talking about demographics. And I told them, between China and India, they are soon going to have, you can go to Population Pyramid and you can track how all the different age groups break out over time projected and currently. And in each age group in China of childbearing age, there are 6 to 8 million more men than women in every single age category on the population pyramid charts that they have. Think about that. What impact is that? And so they're looking at China and India, close to 200 million, 180 to 200 million males with no prospect of a marriage partner.
That's unbelievable.
Do you know what a young person said? This is a smart guy, okay? Do you know what he said to me? He said, well, maybe they just need to do more transgender surgeries on half of the males.
Wow. Wow.
I'm telling you, and I don't disrespect this kid, this young guy. I like him a lot, but I'm just telling you is he said that in my spirit, just like, whoa, what? And maybe he was just trying to be funny, but in our culture, it's actually true.
Yeah, it is true. That's what makes it so. Has everything been shaped so much that now people are actually believing, well, yeah, that's the solution?
So read Ezekiel 9, go through the midst of the city and place a mark.
Ezekiel 8 and 9?
Everyone whose size, well, Ezekiel 8 is the problem. Ezekiel 9 is how the judgment's coming, but there's a remnant. The remnant gets marked because they sigh and groan at the abominations.
Amen.
And by the way, the mark in the scripture, as Ezekiel wrote it, like this.
Huh.
Can you see that?
Yeah, I can see it looks like
a cross. That's the mark. So there is a good mark, I think. Yeah, everybody says, oh, Heller thinks we should take the mark. Well, you got to get the right mark. Get the Ezekiel 9 one that it talks about.
Great.
John, the cross of Christ. Anyway,
that is,
I could go on and on and on.
That is outstanding. I can't wait for the Temecula conference having you out. Of course, we're doing a few days beforehand too, and then even afterhand. But it's always, so it's wonderful to have you on. Do you have, that's just a great.
Yeah, if people want to contact me, I do have some open evenings there while I'm out there, too. So
Okay.
I'd be willing to go someplace.
Let me put this. So you and I, Tuesday, November 5, election night at Joe Pettick's church, Calvary Chapel of the Harbor in Huntington Beach. And then
maybe a good or bad evening.
Well, it's going to be an evening, that's for sure. And then the conference in Temecula, November 8th, Friday. So between like Wednesday and Thursday, maybe Monday, you got some time if people
I fly back Monday afternoon, so I'm free on Sunday, afternoon, evening, whatever. We'll work something out.
Okay.
But just contact me if you want. Like Tuesday, Wednesday night would be open.
Wonderful, John.
Wednesday night. Well, Wednesday night, I guess, would be open, and Thursday night.
Okay, let me ask you this. Can you sum up in 1 minute? I just asked you something impossible, but let's see what you can do. In 1 minute, we have the confluence of global crises. We look at all these different things. A lot of what we talked about early on was Israel, but all of these other things you brought into it. How would you sum up what we are watching? And you had mentioned to me earlier, the secular news is talking about these global crises, all happening at the same time, trying to figure it out. Can you put it together for us?
The idea I got for the title of this episode, The Confluence of Global Crises, came from a secular guy that I heard this morning on like Rumble channel or someplace. And it just kind of clicked in my ear. We know there are birth pangs. And we know that these are going to happen and they're going to get close, just like the birth is a perfect example of what we're going through. It's going to be painful. Now, we know the end result is good, but they're going to get stronger and stronger. And I really think we live at this time that we're going to see more of these things. So I don't know how much of this we see before we get out of here. I'm just saying is God will get us when he's ready for us. You'll either rapture us or you'll die. Okay. You win, by the way, in that scenario, either way. But I just think we're going to see a lot of things. It's kind of been funny watching in the Bible prophecy community. I wish I had $1 for every time somebody said, I never thought we would see this.
You'd be rich. You'd
so
be rich just off of that.
I'd be buying my island in the Caribbean. Tom, what's going on in the world is so evil. And I just saw it. I live here in Columbus, the Limited. And the head of the Limited was close friends with Jeffrey Epstein. They just charged the former head. Remember all the ads we had of Abercrombie and Fitch?
Yeah.
And how disgusting they were?
Yeah.
The head of Abercrombie and Fitch was just arrested, charged with sex trafficking charges.
No shocker, huh?
he and his partner were seducing young male models for sexual purposes.
And P. Diddy.
Now, I want to tell you, I've heard rumors of stuff like this because it's just down the road. It's out there by the big data farms in New Albany, where they're headquartered. And I've heard rumors about what's happened out there.
Wow.
Let me just say this. So I wish I had the visual up. I don't have it up. In Tehran, they have this square, and they put up these posters. The most recent poster they put up, you can find it, Irish Times and other places. It was all these missiles coming in, from Iran. And in the middle of the poster is the Temple Mount with the Dome of the Rock. It's at night, all lit up. So you can see the missiles coming in with the rockets. And on it says, we're going to destroy you. And this is just the beginning. So I guess the question is,
wow,
should we believe them? And by the way, the poster in Tehran is in Hebrew.
Huh.
They're telling us what they're going to do. And yeah, I'm looking at an article right here to the right on my screen to the right of Amos Hochstein trying to rewrite Resolution 1701. Well, maybe we need to expand the safe zone a little bit north of the Litani River.
That guy, by the way, Hochstein.
He served in the IDF.
He's bad. He's not good. He's a bad person.
No. We could go on and on about this.
Well, we could. So we'll conclude it there because we could. And I'm going to give you got time on November 5th, November 8, 9, 10, November 13, and every time in between now and then.
Yeah.
And I'd like to have you back on here soon, too. So
sure.
It was just, John, it was great.
Always love it. Thanks, Tom. I really do appreciate it.
It was wonderful having you on today. Okay, everybody, thank you for joining us. And we would both ask you would go to our channels, like, subscribe, and share. And all this truth, you wonder how can we engage in getting the message out? Well, it's by sharing. Sharing these messages that John and I do on our channels. It really helps us to combat the lies with truth. It's one of the ways you can partner with us just to do that. It's free to do that. We would really appreciate it, and it's just being on board and moving forward and getting the truth out there. Thank you, John, very much for today. Looking forward to talking to you soon. Again, everybody, God bless you all, and shalom for now.